Police telephone free for use of public. Advice and assistance obtainable immediately. Officers and cars respond to urgent calls. Pull to open. Pull to open. Pull to open. Pull to open.
How many more of these are there? It couldn't be an infinite regression, could it?
I hope not, because if it is, we'll never get out of it.
Peoples of the universe, please attend carefully. The message that follows is vital to the future of you all.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who exactly as God intended in random order. I'm Pete Pachal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and we have been on a classic Doctor Who series kick for some time. Just like the TARDIS was trapped in E-space in the Tom Baker final serial, which we're season, which we're visiting again today. We have been trapped for weeks. If not months, with our hiatus in the classic series. 3 episodes ago, we were at the Claws of Axos, that John Pertwee story with weird eye stalks and hippies.
Oh, you're jumping right into previously.
Previously,
there you go. Sorry,
yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Trying to get the cue for the little whoosh.
Whoosh. Yes. Then we went to the Romans. Our last historical, and then last week we were at the Mark of the Rani, the Colin Baker era pseudo-historical, and we have been brought to a story that we have mentioned many times on the show, that I have mentioned many times, near and dear to my heart. We mentioned it last week. It is Logopolis.
Season 18, Serial 7, the final serial of that year.
Yes.
Big year, big episode, big time for Pull to Open here. Guys, I am so excited to talk about Logopolis. I've probably been waiting 40 years to get out all my thoughts on this episode.
Oh my God.
Which have certainly changed over the years. I'm excited to get to it. Lots to talk about. Obviously, it's a Regeneration episode. It's got the Master. It's got radio telescopes and crazy science and math. It's all in this one, guys. It's got so many companions. It's bursting with companions.
That's right.
There's clips. It's insane. It's all in this.
It's Doctor Who's first clip show. Which is very unusual in 1981. They could only afford 2-second clips at a time. And one of those clips may turn out to be particularly fortuitous for things that we have to discuss in this episode of
Oh my, well, we'll get to it. But first, before we get to it, guys, we have to clear up a couple of things. One, we're in a new era of Pull to Open, as you know. We're upgraded our whole YouTube experience. We're uploading season 2. We're also on Spotify video podcast, so we're super excited to get to you guys in more places and just have a better experience overall. That is, there are some growing pains. We all realize the audio levels were a little off on the last upload. Hopefully they're better this time. We're going to do our best. Chris has been running around grabbing microphones out of dumpsters to make sure we can do this, and I'm kicking my way around making sure the edit is top notch, which is harder than it looks, especially when the internet keeps kicking one of us off.
Yeah, that was a pretty wild week when I was in a UK hotel. The last edition. Careful listeners may have heard the phone that came ringing in the background. Which is a little known fact. That was the hotel reception who had received a package for someone named Taylor, which was not me.
Well, I just thought it was like the Pull to Open actual panel. The phone behind there that was ringing. It's the Pull to Open phone, guys.
I know. And then we go straight to a story that uses the Pull to Open phone. So wild. But yeah, so we had some audio issues.
Yeah, we've had some technical difficulties. It's all good. We're going to get them fixed. It's going to be fine. It's going to get better and better every week. So don't worry about it. And also, I just had to talk a little more about the Mark of the Rani, because as I was putting together the show notes for the upload, I can't believe I didn't see this earlier. now, as everyone knows, the Mark of the Rani was serial 3 in season 22 of Doctor Who. The episode where we talked about the Mark of the Rani was actually season 3, episode 22 for Pull to Open. And it's like, that's why the randomizer took us there. I mean, it's
Yep.
obvious in hindsight.
It's so numerologically obvious that they are whispering it on street corners in Logopolis. If you listen very closely, you can go season 22, serial 3, season 3, episode 22, just over and over, and that keeps the universe together. Little known fact.
Could be. Yep, that one. Just that's a delicate balance. That's
And speaking of keeping the universe together, there is a problem in our Pull to Open universe.
there's a
entropy.
discontinuity.
Yes,
I think somewhere in our world.
We've sensed it. Something is wrong.
I know it's actually going to generate a lot of controversy when we talk about it. So, but we can't. So we're not going to talk about it until the very end of this podcast, and you'll see why. It's actually, there's a reason, not just because I want to tease everybody, but there's a reason because it affects something at the very end of this podcast. But we will get to that. Stay tuned for the controversy.
Not to tease anything further, but it's sort of the Pull to Open equivalent of a mysterious guy in a white costume is standing just off screen
and a paper mache mask,
beckoning towards us. He'll have words with both of us before the end of this very funereal episode of Pull to Open, and things will change after that.
Words off screen, though. Not allowed to talk on screen.
All words off screen. Yes, exactly. The Watcher was not equity, so couldn't actually have a speaking role. Sad. But anyway,
but first,
before we get to that,
before we get to all of that, guys, just a reminder, reviews are something that we really like and something that really helps us. And so if you haven't reviewed the podcast yet, we would love it if you did. I know a lot of you listen on Spotify, even Spotify video podcasts, and there really isn't an opportunity to review there. But if you have access to an Apple device, you can go to Apple Podcasts, check out the podcast there. Apple loves it when people review podcasts. We'll actually elevate those podcasts. So please do take a minute or two to leave a review. It doesn't even have to be a long review. Go ahead and leave an emoji, or you can just leave a rating. Any of those are good. And the more you do that, the more we can reach more ears, and the more we can do wonderful, wonderful podcasts week after week. So go ahead and do that. And for among the top 50, the first 50 people who do so, and we're going to do an inventory soon and see how close we are, you will get a prize.
Yes, and we've been asking Pete questions. When I say we, I mean one of our guests and myself have been asking Pete questions about what this mystery prize is.
Yeah.
That is, we know it's a special Doctor Who item that's very hard to find online. It's a collectible of some sort. It's smaller than a bread box. It is mineral, not animal or vegetable. It is mostly from New Who, but may reference something from Classic Who. And we've narrowed it down to the Stephen Moffat era.
All true. All good. Yes.
True. And
those are the facts as you know them.
And I think we're talking about Matt Smith era, right? Because because it's kind of not Scottish. I think we'd established it's mostly not Scottish, or it straddles a Scottish doctor. So we're talking mostly Matt Smith era. So here's my question for this week. Is this something or someone that would have been encountered by Amy Pond?
Oh, that's a good question. Was it encountered by her? That's what taking encountered fairly loosely, I guess. I would have to say yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. That's encountered loosely. So Pond encountered it loosely.
I'm sure. Yes. I mean, she must have.
She must have.
Oh yeah, of course she did. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes, ish. Yes. I'm gonna go with yes.
All right. Well, that helps us narrow it down.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas, write in and let us know what questions I should ask next time, because I'm kind of stumped here, people. I think it's the classic series connection is kind of messing me up here.
Yeah. Where could they write in, Chris?
Yeah. Well, there are many ways to find us. We're on all the socials,
That's right.
and we have a new URL on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
which is very exciting.
Yep. Our URL on YouTube is youtube.com pull to open. So feel free to reach out to us there. Just go ahead and comment on a video. We see all the comments. You could reach out to us on Twitter at pull to open 63, Instagram pull to open 63, or TikTok at pull to open. Speaking of YouTube, YouTube's going great. We have the new URL. We have our new opening. Season 2, the first episode of our own season 2, way back when we started the random era, Planet of Fire, that one's up now. We've got more of those coming soon. The King's Demons is next. Then there's Dark Water, Death in Heaven, and a whole bunch more. So those are going to be coming every Wednesday. So keep looking for those, and the new episodes, the ones we're doing now, will keep posted on Saturdays. So you're getting double your money there on YouTube. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
We still got our plot summaries up there. They're conveniently in a playlist, and as we do the episodes, we didn't start the plot summaries I think until like midway through season 2 or so. So once
Right.
we reach there, the old ones that aren't on YouTube will start to appear on YouTube. So yay! Lots of reasons to keep coming back to YouTube. And thanks to our new video era, as we said earlier, Spotify video playlist. That is another place you can watch/listen to the podcast. And if you don't like giving the big Google all your data, it is there for you. So
Well,
congratulations, Spotify.
as a
People.
Spotify subscriber, I also noticed that it is, if you're watching YouTube and you're not subscribed to YouTube Premium, it will stop if you're outside the app. With the Spotify video podcasts, you can listen to it. If you're not actually in the app, you can watch it if you're in the app. Like it gives you a wonderful range of options. So do check it out if you're on Spotify.
Yeah, man. I got to say, Spotify does a good job. Not to, get too much there. If you want to sponsor Spotify, go for it. But in other words, like it's just appears if you're on an interface with video. Like there's not some complicated portal for video podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just if there's video, it plays. If there isn't, it doesn't. And you don't even have to watch it if you don't want to. So I think that's just a really smart way to do it. They didn't overthink it. So way to go, Spotify.
Yeah, nice job. So it's almost time. Speaking of the video summaries of each story, I'm anti-procrastinating on this. Normally, we try to spin this out to avoid doing the TLDW. But before we get there, I think you wanted to say a little bit about the setup that you have behind you.
Yeah, sure.
I can see a TARDIS in the distance.
I do. Yeah, I'd love to move my chair a little bit more so people can check it out.
Nice.
All right, it might be.
If we're not watching on Spotify or YouTube, we have a little TARDIS diorama there.
Yeah, let me move my microphone a bit so people can actually see. So, yeah, this is something. It's funny. Like if you're a subscriber to Doctor Who magazine, you might recognize it. So they actually had this in Doctor Who magazine, like the walls and the console and the
That's
hat rack
right.
and stuff. It was basically a thing you could put together, and I put it together. And actually, it was a super fun project because I got to do it with my daughter, who is 9 years old, and she loves to do art, and she takes art classes with dioramas and stuff. And so she's like an expert at building these things. And so we made a floor, which was not provided. We cut cardboard for the walls so they were nice and solid, and we just glued it all together. And so it was fun. So I put in my Peter Davison of action figure, which is in bad shape. You can't tell here, but it fell off a shelf months ago, and its leg is kind of broken.
No.
And
But he managed to drag himself back to the TARDIS, which is good.
Funny. It's like the Tom Baker death to the Peter Davison figure. And I also got you can see it's got my DVD of Logopolis, which I've had for a long time. And I've got actually what I actually watched it on, which is the season 7 / season 18, season 7 of Tom Baker, season 18, the show, Blu-rays. And that's what I used to watch it and check out the special features. So it's all there, guys.
Very nice. Yeah, this is such a TARDIS heavy story, as we'll get into. I also have
that's one of your favorites.
TARDIS blanket right behind me. We have the pull to open window. I'm now centering in my hand. Entirely appropriate since this is, spoiler alert, the very first story that we've come across on Pull to Open that uses the words pull to open in the dialogue as uttered by Tegan Jovanka. So we'll definitely be making use of that in the audio going forward.
Yeah, they
So,
didn't actually say it in Smile, right? Because there was a lot of TARDIS references there, and even to the panel, but that
correct.
was more about your cop, your
Yep.
space police.
Yep. As long-time listeners know, it's always in the intro is Matt Smith saying "pull to open" from the Doctor's wife, which is the
Mhm.
only instance I'd been able to find of someone actually saying it in audio. Now we have two, so I'm very excited at the audio opportunities going forward.
Nice. Shall we go forward then, Chris?
Let's
Now that we have
do it.
no other business, that Legends of the Sea Devils, the most recent episode, has now been seen by both of us. There's no question about that.
That is true.
We can cut right to it, my friend.
Yeah.
We can cut right to TLDW for Logopolis. Too long, didn't watch. Too long, Doctor Who. And we have it's a classic series episode
Yeah.
with four classic series story with 4 episodes. We allot to summarize the plot of a story. We allot 30 seconds per 25-minute episode. So you have a full 2 minutes to summarize the story of Logopolis. Are you ready, sir?
I'm not, because this is, we always have rabbit holes that we fall down when we're doing TLDW, and Logopolis is pretty much nothing but rabbit holes. It's like, it's less of a story and more of a series of rabbit holes that you have to walk through. Could fall down at any point. So
walk through to other universes sometimes.
yes, exactly. The rabbit holes drain off the entropy of the universe into other TLDWs, so it leaks out. But yeah, I think I'm ready. I think I'm confident.
Right.
I've been the moment has been prepared for. I've been working for 40 years towards this summary. So let's do it.
All right. Well, don't let that entropy field catch up with you, and let's get this started. Okay, we're gonna do the official pull to open summary of Logopolis. Begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
So the Doctor and Adric are in the TARDIS. They're in the cloister, and the Doctor's like, "Yeah, let's not go to Gallifrey. We can't explain the Romana thing. Let's get the chameleon circuit fixed." So he does lots of measurements of what he thinks is a police box in the UK. Actually, it turns out to be the Master's TARDIS that has appeared around the police box, which means that a policeman and an Australian auntie have been sucked in and minimized by the Master. While the Doctor gets into this series of ever-darkening TARDISes as he goes to the TARDIS within the TARDIS within the TARDIS, he tries to flush the Master's TARDIS out of his own TARDIS by dropping the TARDIS in the Thames. He can't do it because he's actually landed above the Thames, but he has a word with the Watcher, this mysterious white figure, who helps him decide to go to Logopolis, which is a place in the universe that's actually keeping the universe together through pure mathematics that everyone's uttering on every street corner. He tries to get the TARDIS fixed. It actually ends up shrinking the TARDIS, so he's tiny inside the TARDIS. Meanwhile, the Master hops out and tries to disrupt Logopolis, tries to figure out what's going on there. Nyssa has been brought there by the Watcher. Tegan's there, Adric's there. The Doctor and the Master team up because the Master suddenly realizes, oh crap, I think I'm destroying the universe. By stopping the Logopolins talking. And then they have to feed stuff through a computer. It's actually a replica of something called the Pharos Project in Earth, and that doesn't work, so they have to go there because the monitor of Logopolis disappears. They have to go there and feed it through the giant radio telescope, broadcasts the universe. The Doctor drops off the telescope, regenerates into Peter Davison with the help of the Watcher, and the Master's evil plan to take over the universe by threatening with entropy are doomed, and that's pretty much all of Logopolis.
Time. Nicely done. Wow. You even had a little extra time there, filling in a little of the blanks once he regenerated.
It's like, okay, so let's go back and talk about CVEs.
That would have been a habit hole. Holy cow. So anyway, 1 second, everyone, while I explain CVEs 20 minutes later.
Jeez. Big holes in space that E-space came from. There, done.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's tight enough. Tight enough if you want it tight.
How did I do? Was there anything major you think that isn't mentioned here?
You kind of skipped over the whole entropy field.
Yes.
That, I think you mentioned it sort of threatens the universe, but that it actually destroys giant chunks of it. Was a,
Oh yeah,
It's a
yeah.
big deal.
And by the way, Traken is destroyed off screen.
Yeah.
Billions of people die, but that's just sort of this is just a few years after Star Wars, right?
Right.
Where Alderaan was destroyed, and then Princess Leia is just joking about Luke Skywalker's height as a stormtrooper the next time we see her. So
Yeah.
she's over the death of billions pretty instantly.
Well, at
And
least in that
so's
case,
Nyssa, yeah.
at least in that case, we had never seen Alderaan at the time anyway. Like we didn't
Mm.
really know. We had no connection with it. It was just sort of a bunch of people, billions got murdered. Whereas we've seen Traken. Like we
Yeah.
know the people there. It's okay. That's too bad. The doctor sort of saved stuff, and the keeper and all that stuff was ongoing. It's no, that's meaningless now. They're all dead.
But Nyssa holds it together, looking at the monitor and watching the TARDIS monitor and watching the star system that she was born in disappear. She kind of just
Yeah.
not even a trembling lip from a
Well, it's funny. We're kind of starting at the end, but
Yeah.
I got to say, like that was a great first date for Adric and Nyssa right up until that point. And then it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of a downer when your girlfriend's whole entire civilization is destroyed right in front of you while you're on your date.
If
It's like,
indeed that is a date, I mean, it's
totally a date.
totally a date.
Adric and Nyssa, they're totally a
Well,
thing. Come on.
yeah, okay. And the Watcher is like the chaperone, I guess.
Well,
that
kinda,
that
yeah.
was not to we'll get to the Watcher, and again he's just off screen pointing at us, pointing at our Codex. Something is very wrong here. But I had totally forgotten how much the Watcher is in this. He's
He's all over the place.
Yeah, he flies the
And
TARDIS.
he talks to people. He obviously talks to the doctor. He talks to Adric, and you never see him talk. That was sort of my joke earlier. It's like he
Yeah.
can only talk off screen, and you kind of wonder what the Watcher's voice is and what exactly he says. Like, I got to say, I guess I would ask you: do you think this is a good choice on Bidmead's part, whether it's Bidmead or the director? But I guess he didn't write lines for him. In that, if he wrote, like, I imagine if he wrote something for the Watcher, they would be along the lines of very like stilted language, like, and it would
Yeah.
just be something comical, you know? It'd
Yeah,
be either
he'd
that.
just be like
Yeah.
totally esoteric statements and totally ominous in everything he said. No, I thought it was an excellent choice by Bidmead to have the Watcher be silent. And this does sort of run into part of the problem with Logopolis is I just have no chill where Logopolis is concerned. I cannot do an objective review. This was so important to me as a child, this particular story. And the Watcher is a big part of that. And I was reminded by the Doctor's conversation with the Watcher, which, isn't it funny the way memory plays tricks on us? I'd always assumed that happens just off the motorway the first time we
Right.
see the Doctor. It doesn't. Actually, the conversation takes place on the Albert Bridge
Right.
across the Thames. The second time we see the Watcher, he kind of beckons the Doctor up. And what I realized is what the Watcher reminds me of, and that moment in particular, is like, when you're a kid and you know that the grown-ups are having a discussion about
Right,
something very important, but they're standing just a little bit off deliberately so that you can't hear. Like, that's why I feel the Watcher must have resonated with every child watching that.
Right.
Watching the show. It's like something is being discussed about the Doctor's future, the show's future, and it's like the adults are having a conversation over the bridge over there. So I kind of felt for Adric there. Adric and all of us. And it kind of I've forgotten that the Watcher also talks to Adric, which I think kind of ruins it a little bit.
It does a little bit, yeah, because then it's also not done in this faraway location shot, which kind of somehow, through just the style of it, makes it a little more forgivable.
Yeah.
And it just sort of seems random that he's talking to Adric and not Nyssa. I guess Adric's been traveling with the Doctor longer, but and someone's got to do the TARDIS. Like he's the one who brings it back in the universe.
Maybe the Watcher might just be an old school misogynist. He's like, I would like to speak to the Indeed, I'd like to speak to the man of the TARDIS. Oh, he's not available. I'll take the boy. You're the man of the TARDIS now.
I'll take his ward.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I gotta say, you're dead on about the adults in the room, the kids off screen, and it might be part of the reason I always kind of thought. I know Adric was sort of thought of a little bit almost like Wesley Crusher in the original Star Trek, but
mm,
I never minded Adric. I thought, sure he was a little whiny sometimes, but um, I kind of liked him and Tom Baker together for some reason because it was just so different
yeah.
from every other companion, and it was a little more Batman and Robin, and
It's
you could relate
Batman
to
and
him more.
Robin. It would be Batman and Robin if Batman did not hide his contempt for Robin one bit. And that is the
Right,
thing. And it's especially about, Tom Baker and Matthew Waterhouse, right? We covered this in State of Decay,
right.
where we're like, oh, Matthew Waterhouse, you do not help yourself by giving Tom Baker acting advice on day one. And clearly they still have this very contentious relationship, a few stories later. Um, but Tom Baker was
Yeah.
just an asshole to everyone.
Yeah, that's to start a little bit with the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently, I don't think it was directed at anyone or in specifically. I feel like he probably got over the Matthew Waterhouse stuff by this point, but he just hated everybody at this point. Like he kind
Yeah.
of was, and it wasn't so much hating everybody, but he was just like he knew he was leaving. This was the last episode, and everyone has said, from Janet Fielding to John Nathan Turner to Bidmead, there's just tension on the set. Like
Yeah.
he was being difficult, he was overreacting to things constantly, and it was just, it was a very tense shoot, which some of that certainly does play out. And you can sort of see it in Tom Baker's performance because his
Yeah.
habit, which he actually does quite a bit throughout his run, just not so much. Tom Baker has a habit of not looking at other actors he's
Yeah.
performing with, and in this episode, he barely looks at anybody throughout. Um, even sort of like he certainly doesn't look at Adric much at all in that
No.
first scene when they're in the cloisters. But
He's
if you
pacing. Yeah.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
look at it throughout, he barely looks at anybody, and there's a scene. There's only one scene where I think it works, and this is kind of probably where I disagree with Chris Bidmead because I saw an interview in the making of. He thought the Doctor and the Master should look at each other at the end of episode 3. There's the cliffhanger where they team up, and there's
Mm-hmm.
the handshake. I actually like it the way Tom Baker plays it here because I felt like he was so disgusted with himself that
Yes.
he had to ally himself with his murderer that he couldn't even look at him. So if you read it that way, I think it works.
It is definitely a happy accident of the miserable circumstances off screen and the effect that that produces on screen. One of the great things about Logopolis is it's a meditation on death
Yeah.
and entropy and everything ending, which is like hugely big topics for a kids show. But also that is made so perfect by the fact that Tom Baker's Doctor is not happy. You might even say he doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
He's just like he sees the end. He knows that it's coming, especially the first time he sees the Watcher. Watching this, if it's anything but for the first time, that there's a change that comes over his demeanor. Like the cloister bell has rung.
Mhm.
And the wonderful Paddy Kingsland soundtrack in the background all
Yeah.
contributes to this atmosphere. And the fact that Tom Baker is kind of exploding all over the place, he does that kind of plosive thing where it's like, someone will
Yeah.
say a line of dialogue and you kind of get outraged at them, kind of furious at them for 5 seconds. And it works so well for his Doctor, but especially in the context of his Doctor knowing that his time is up.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those moments. I remember just like when Tegan appears in the console room for the first time, reveals that this woman is Auntie Vanessa. She's like, well, that's it. She's got to come with us. Like he's
Yeah.
just, this is the thing Tom Baker was a master at, of sort of going to 10 and then back down to 2 and doing it in this sort of controlled way that would make you think he's like a funny guy, just a clown, and then suddenly he's got the gravitas of someone who knows what's going on and can really do something about it. Although in here, obviously in this episode, the clown is barely seen at all. Like
Yeah.
although it is there, and I got to say, what a great choice by Baker that literally his final scene when everyone crowds around him. The first thing he does, he lets out a smile, a brief smile, And I don't. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the script. That he just kind of grit, like he looks up and he's kind of trying to put on a brave face, and that's it. So the Fourth Doctor, like, oh
Mm,
yes, you know,
yeah.
like you just kind
It's
of like,
the end, but the
yeah,
moment's been prepared for. Yeah, and that's ironic because Baker hated the script. He hated the fact that
mm,
he wanted the Doctor to have a more heroic ending.
right,
He refused to scream as he
right, as
fell
he
from
fell,
the
which
radio tower.
I think that's okay.
That's fair. That's fair. But also, like, he wasn't happy that his Doctor would be last seen in a prone position.
Right.
Uh, I
Yeah.
don't I don't know why he wasn't happy about that because there's a nice circularity to that because of course that's how we first saw
Right.
him in Robot in Planet of the Spiders actually.
It's almost a
Uh,
wonder he isn't prone more often when he
yeah.
regenerates, because usually, you've been mortally wounded by something.
Well, let's
So
let's talk about regeneration
let's
because, of
do it.
course, this is much on our minds, given that we've done the 10th planet, we've done
Mhm.
Power of the Daleks, so we saw the original regeneration, or as Doctor Who magazine used to call it, rejuvenation,
Mhm.
from the very first time. What watching Logopolis made me realize is how few of what we would think of as traditional regenerations there are in
Right.
the show. In fact, we don't really get one until Caves of Androzani.
Well, what would you think? Wouldn't you think third to fourth is like a traditional one?
Yeah, but you've got the what's the name? The llama, like he who
Oh
sort of
yeah.
appears.
Oh, or whatever. Ghost.
Yeah,
I don't know. One of
yeah.
those.
It's like I haven't actually watched Planet of Spiders yet. I'm saving that one. It takes us there, but like that's what you get in that famous
Right.
regeneration scene. So you would be forgiven for thinking, as a Doctor Who fan, given that Patrick Troughton says that the TARDIS was instrumental in
Right.
in
True.
creating him in Power of the Daleks. Then obviously War Games, the regeneration takes place off screen. It's forced by the Time Lords. We don't actually get to see it. Then there's the Planet of the Spiders
Yeah.
connection.
Now
Then
this one.
the Watcher is somehow involved in regenerations.
Yeah, so
Um,
let's talk about the Watcher and the
yeah,
regeneration of it. Like what is the Watcher? How come, and mostly like how come we've never seen him in any other regeneration? I mean, it's a great idea, and it is like, because of how the other Time Lord regenerates in Planet of the Spiders, you could make the inference, oh, this is that, just sort
yeah.
of differently. Because in the Planet of the Spiders, there's this projection of his future self that then he regenerates into. So
So,
this is that
mhm.
in the Doctor doing that, which is fine, but it's also like it never happens again. So what is
Yeah.
special about the Fourth Doctor in that he gets the Watcher and no one else does?
I tell you what, the biggest mystery of all is how the hell does Adric know that he's called the Watcher? Or Nyssa knows that he's called the Watcher. When I think she's the one who says at the end, the Watcher was the Doctor all along. And
Yeah, it's kind of like she reads the credits, I guess, and I guess you could just sort of say, well, I mean, he's this watching guy, and they're just they're naming him in the way that newspapers name superheroes.
yeah,
You got to call it something, like
it's
the Green
actually
Goblin, I guess.
a very inaccurate name because, as we've established, the Watcher brings Nyssa from Traken, saves her life,
Right.
somehow picks her out of the billions that are going to die.
Yeah.
He's takes them out of time and space in the TARDIS.
Right.
He's
He
all
pilots
over
the
the place.
TARDIS.
He
Yeah.
pilots the TARDIS. Like he's not just a watcher. He's a driver.
Yeah.
He's the you might even call him the pilot, which is who
Ooh.
Tegan was looking to talk to the pilot, and we're assuming not referencing the Bill Potts curtain raiser from the new
Yeah.
series called the pilot, but
So
yeah,
Chris Bidmead said a little bit about this in talking about it. He said, like, well, for us, sort of on the outside looking at a regeneration, with our limited understanding of time, it looks like a continuous event, but
yeah,
because of it's a Time Lord, that regenerations can sometimes be temporal events too, right? So that sort of it almost begins before it even begins, if you sort of take my meaning. And
yeah,
that sort of works, but again, it doesn't answer why it would happen here and not in other places. And all I can figure is that maybe it's when the future isn't certain,
yes.
and the regeneration is one of many possible futures, that you get these weird temporal waves emanating from it, and you're kind of not sure which reality you're in
Yeah,
until you've passed the event.
I believe Bidmead said that it was his original idea was that the universe was so out of alignment that the universe itself forces this sort of echo of the Doctor back through time
Right.
in order to right itself, which is kind of this unusually non-Bidmeadian mystical view
Yeah.
of time and space there, which is kind of interesting. Uh, I like. I mean, you know, if you look at the Watcher versus the Valiard for mysterious future
Right.
regenerations of the Doctor, like the Watcher is much more deliberately mysterious, whereas the
Hmm.
Valiard is a bit kind of, how did that happen? Um,
Yeah.
but like the Watchers, the further away from the camera the Watcher is, the better, right? It's whenever he's
Agreed.
up close, you're like, looking a little too much like a clown
Yeah. A
in that
pasty
odd
clown.
pasty clown in that odd costume. It's actually why he doesn't speak any words. His mouth is
So
basically sewn shut there.
another
Uh,
thing that they gloss over, and it's
mhm.
blink and you miss it, but Nyssa just arrives, the Watcher gets her. How does he even do that?
Yeah,
Does he like because he didn't use the TARDIS, right? Because that it's there and they're measuring it, unless it was
or did
completely off
he?
screen, which is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's it. He just did a real quick jaunt in it right after they arrived and just came back, and this has just been wandering around.
It's one of those. There's a lot of. We've talked before on Pull to Open about the dream logic of Doctor Who, and
Right.
Logopolis is a perfect example. There's so many things in this that do not make sense in
Right.
any way other than if you see it as dream
Well,
logic. Right?
they don't make logical sense, but
Yeah.
they work. This is the
Yeah.
thing, right? Like a lot of this stuff, like we could pick at it, and we do in this podcast, but it is like we're very aware when something works. Because I remember as a kid really, really liking this episode, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of it holds up because the concepts that Bidmead is pulling out, like just the idea of a block transfer computation that through pure mathematics you can alter reality,
Mm.
which is what it's mind blowing, makes no sense on some level, but it is like this crazy idea that like, okay, I'm going to go with it, and if you go with it, you kind of it sort of unlocks a universe of possibilities,
Yeah.
and you just start to wonder like, oh wow, what else could they do with this? And they do more with it in Castrovalva,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, so the Watcher is wonderful dream logic, and I kind of prefer that he's not sort of been explained, and maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we can get into the territory later of what we want our headcanon to be, but I love the idea that the curator at the end of his regeneration becomes the Watcher, goes back to warn himself and blend with himself. That might be a good
Mm.
way for the curator's whole arc to end, and maybe for him to be the final regeneration of the Doctor, basically come back and merge with himself in his
Right.
fifth incarnation. So I like that. I got to say, my favorite dream logic, rather nightmare logic moment of this episode. It's not the Watcher, but it has to do with the TARDIS. It's the TARDISes within TARDISes,
Right.
and the fact
They
that
get
every
darker.
time they get darker.
Yeah.
Oh my god! As a kid, that was
That's a
literally
good choice.
one of the scariest things I'd seen on
Yeah.
Doctor Who, bar none. And it's odd, isn't it? For all the
Yeah.
monsters, for all the Daleks, for all Davros, um, it was this moment of just like you go into a room and it's the same as the last room, but it's darker and everything's getting more recursive. And
It was the upside down 40 years early. Or I
yeah,
guess like 35 or so, given when Stranger Things first debuted. But yeah,
and
because
I
totally,
didn't
it's like
know that it's there is a moment of the Master's TARDIS within Doctor's TARDIS in, is it the Time Monster? I did not
yeah,
know
they
this.
show the Master Starters in the Time Monster, and they look
Right.
pretty identical, as I recall. I
I
remember wrong
didn't
about
know
that.
if there was like a TARDIS within a TARDIS sequence in that.
Oh, no, there was just I don't think so. No, this is that it's been so long. I just remember Time Ram
Yeah.
from the Time Monster. No, this it's such a cool idea too. TARDIS within a TARDIS and this Russian dolls, which you're thinking just like Adric. Is it infinite? Do they keep going? Like, how could there be three TARDISes? And I kind of like you start to wonder how that works, and then well, because the master keeps dematerializing, I think, and zipping around, like it sort of screws up all the dimensional stuff. I don't know, they never really fully explain it, but it's like you kind of go with it and it's cool. The one thing I will say that still kind of doesn't quite work, and honestly didn't even work on first viewing, is that how they get out of it. They just kind of like go through the third or fourth TARDIS or police box, and they just come outside.
They
And
come
it's
out the
like,
back. Yeah.
yeah, and they come out the back. That's the other thing, which makes no sense. It's not even a door, and so you're just like, oh, okay. I guess that was it. Like you kind of wanted them to need to do something. There needed to be. They should have done. I mean, Bidmead did great here, but
Hmm.
even dramatically, I think that needed one more barrier for them to get out of it for it to really work.
It did. I don't know. It kind of worked for me as a kid because I think by that point you're so terrified of where this is going that the sudden sort of comedic release of and they're just out the back of the TARDIS is kind of necessary at that moment. It's very much of a piece with the we're at the bottom of the Thames. What on earth is going on? Why isn't the water pressure opening the door? Oh, oops, we're on a barge. Very very similar to that reveal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm also of the fan. It's more of a get on with it decision.
Yeah.
Like, let's not have too much here. So that's fine. What did you think of the Thames moment? This is famously Chris Bidmead is taking a lot of flack over this. We're going to flood the TARDIS. I mean, we've talked about it or mentioned it before about how is it like the Doctor thought this was a good idea, but when
Yes.
you watched it this time, did it work any better? What did you think?
It did for me because I think, my headcanon on a lot of Logopolis now is that the Doctor has just gone a bit round the twist
Right.
at this point. He's perhaps been driven so mad by the news of his forthcoming regeneration that he's kind of raging and trying to get out of it in all sorts of weird ways.
Yeah, I get it. It's not quite madness, but it is desperation. And he's just
Yes.
like, how do I get out of this or how do I deal with this? And I'm going to do something totally crazy and unexpected. So that's kind of how I justified it too.
Yeah.
Um,
What about Romana's room? Because that's something
right.
else he does. He jettisons Romana's room at one point near that, which to me, like, the stated reason makes no sense. It provides
That
extra
actually, I thought it was
thrust.
okay because he
Uh,
had to, there was dimensional issues
mhm.
where they were because of all the TARDIS is overlapping and he couldn't just go. So he needed to jettison something to get more fuel. And I think they didn't really play it this way that much, but the idea that he's jettisoning Romana's room, like
Mm.
he's getting rid of baggage for
Yes,
the Don Baker Doctor, right? Like he could literally he could jettison the swimming pool, right? Like like we already
exactly.
know by this point the TARDIS is pretty much infinite. It's massive inside, but he chooses to jettison that room.
Again,
And
and I think it's less about it's clearly an emotional response to the loss of Romana, whose ghost sort of haunts this whole story.
yeah.
He's still clearly not over her. Um, by the way, we take a quick look into her room. I'd
Hmm.
completely forgotten about this. We see in Romana's room, did you notice on her desk there is a little framed photo of K9?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Aw, yeah. Yeah, he
Can you see
misses.
that? Is it visible or did you read that?
I read that. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the screenshot again,
I mean,
but
I caught her outfit from I think the Leisure Hive when
yeah.
they were on the beach, and I think there's like one other. So I got that. But
Well,
yeah,
we'll have to zoom in and find out.
yeah, the companion question here is an interesting one. So
Hmm.
you have Adric and Tegan and Nyssa. They're all relatively new. Adric is still pretty new. He's only been around for like 4 or 5 stories at this point.
Hmm.
And apparently, behind the scenes, they had reached out to Elizabeth Sladen and Louise Jameson to see if they would come back to sort of help ease into this new era and sort of say goodbye to Tom Baker. Both of them declined. I don't know if it's ever been reported why, whether they were busy or if they just thought it was this Doctor Who was in the past for them, or possibly they just didn't want to work with Tom Baker again. Who knew?
Yeah,
Maybe all of that was sort of led to it. But
simultaneously. Yeah.
well, I think it
And by the way, speaking of previous companions and the shadow of Romana overhanging, Tom Baker got married to Lana Ward
right.
during production on Logopolis.
Oh wow.
And so that may have also kind of fed into his kind of unhappy mood, because clearly that was an unhappy marriage from the very beginning.
Right. And he said, I mean, he talks about that it was actually a happy year, but I
Mm,
could see it being sort of a wanting to move on, and it could be constantly reminded that you're still on this show and she isn't. I don't know. It's obviously very complex emotions. So like I'm a bit forgiving on Tom Baker. Like it's no excuse to be a jerk to someone, but it is also like, well, he was dealing with a lot, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah,
Also, he had poor health that year too. So there's all these things. He's
yeah.
probably feels like he's being confronted with his own mortality to some extent.
Mm,
Um, a lot going on. But anyway, on the
really?
companion question, so
Mm.
what this leads to is the introduction of Tegan,
Yep.
which I honestly think character wise is one of the best introductions. It's almost like it's the archetype used going forward to introduce a new companion that you see. I mean, it's not like they didn't show these people being human before, but there's such a clear backstory, and you really get what this character is about. Like she's a brand new air stewardess. Obviously, she likes to travel. She's
Yep.
working class. She has family. She's very real right off the bat. And so, you see that resonate in Rose. You see that resonate in Donna in the new series.
Mm.
They're kind of instantly likable and relatable for these reasons. So
And
it's a
yet
really good introduction for Tegan.
there's still sort of a shout out to kind of a classic Who companion thing of thinking that the TARDIS is an actual police box, right? Which hadn't
Yeah.
happened in Doctor Who since the 60s, but did used to happen. And that used to be the extent of a personal life they had. So that was kind of nicely married to that. But yeah, Tegan was born partly because they were looking for some funding from the Australian Broadcasting Company,
Mm.
which was interested in baby co-producing. And John Nathan Turner, being John Nathan Turner, is like, I know what will encourage Australians to invest in this show, an Australian. Um,
Well, it's good because how many alternate other accents have we really had on Doctor Who, right? I
yeah,
mean, either doctors or companions at this point. I mean, at this point, Australian's pretty exotic in the
it really
show.
is, yeah, and it's definitely a nice reward for Australia for being one of the countries that has the kind of the largest subset of Doctor Who fandom in it outside the US and UK.
Well, also, didn't some of the old episodes that were lost
Yeah,
were recovered through Australian broadcasters? I don't know where each and every one was, but I do know they sought them out. So
they
thank you,
did. Yeah,
Australia, for providing
yeah,
those, as well as Janet Fielding, who I got to say, okay, I love Janet Fielding. I think Tegan is a great companion. I got to say, in her debut, although the character's written really well, you could see that she's kind of a naive actress. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a jerk. I know everyone loves Jenna Fielding. Believe me, I do too. I don't mean, but it is one of the things that detracts a little bit from the first episode because while she's memorable, she has good lines, she's clearly acting. And
yes.
it's I don't mean to. Sorry, Janet. Again, love you. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in
I
the
was going to
upcoming
say,
centenary special. But
what a coincidence that the randomizer has brought us
right,
here ahead of her appearing in a regeneration episode in the show itself again.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
pretty
I will
wild.
just to bookend that. I think
Mm,
Janet Fielding, if you watch her in her entire run of Doctor Who, as I have probably several times, you
mm,
really see her grow as an
yeah,
actress.
yeah,
And she struggles a little bit in her first full season with Peter Davison, but for the most part, she's good. And then from then on out, from Modern Undead or so, or
yeah.
what did it start? So Arc of Infinity. That's the second season she's in. So Peter Davison's second season. She's great throughout, and like we'll get to Resurrection of the Daleks someday, but like I
Yeah,
think her leaving scene is definitely like one of the most emotional, and
definitely.
it's a big part of it is her performance. So
We'll
she
get to
grows
that.
as an
Yeah,
actress
yeah.
throughout, and I'm still a huge Tegan fan. It's just that you can sort of tell in her first episode she's new at this.
I did
So I
not
had to say it.
know. I did not know until we were researching this that the origin story of the Tegan Jovanka name, that it was supposed to be either Tegan or Jovanka,
Hmm.
was what John Nathan Turner had suggested, and Chris Bidmead misread this as, "Oh, you want me to call her Tegan Jovanka? Great, sure." Uh, which seems to be a classic old Who kind of game of telephone, as it were.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally.
and I just love that. But yeah, she would not be with us, but for the fact that we did not get Sarah Jane back, we did not get Leela back, but she is the first Earth companion since
in a while. Yeah.
Sarah Jane. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I like how they ended up playing that up against Nyssa and Adric, and we should talk about Nyssa too. But I know, and later, certainly in Black Orchid, the fish out of water for the aliens versus the Earth person able to sort of deal culturally with what's going on was played really well.
What was Harry's first episode? Because I'm trying to figure out is Tegan
Harry.
Is Tegan Tom Baker's only introduction to an Earth-based companion is in his entire run?
Could be, because Harry's actually introduced in Pertwee's last season. He's just not a
Right.
companion until Robot.
Yeah. So in the whole 7 years of Tom Baker, no one from Earth is introduced as a companion except Tegan in the very last Tom Baker story.
Oh my goodness. I think
Isn't
you're
that
right.
wild? Isn't that wild?
That never happens. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, it also introduces Nyssa.
Yeah.
Not introduces Nyssa, sorry. She's introduced in
yeah.
The Keeper of Traken, but they bring her back. I guess because they need some more people in the TARDIS. The thing is, even though it turns it into a crowded TARDIS, arguably it's a few too many kids. It's the Tom and the kids.
Pretty much.
In this episode, I really think Nyssa works, and she works well as a companion. I don't think she works as well with Davison. I think Tegan's still the best of that era, but um, Nyssa is that companion. And as I was watching this, it became very clear to me because she's threatened by the Master, and the Master is so evil to her. He's not just a dick to her; he's evil to her specifically. Like really, really rubs salt in the wound of killing her father.
Yeah.
He's so bad, and you really hate him for this. But it made me think about Nyssa and her role. And I remember Joss Whedon when he talked about Buffy, the pilot, that they learned early on to get Allison Hannigan's character Willow in as much trouble as possible because she was so innocent, and she was like this person who was so vulnerable that if she was in danger, it would really ramp the stakes up. And I felt like that same thing is at work here with Nyssa and Sarah Sutton. Like when she's in trouble, when she's being hurt or being the Master's like being evil to her, you really like start to feel the stakes. And I think she works really well for the show for that reason. And she nails lines. I mean, she's very good in this. Like I thought her when she has her line about her world being destroyed, she nails it. It's very good. I mean, the music's good, the shot is good, it's really tight on her face, and you really just sort of feel the misery that she's going through. Yeah. It works.
Yeah, I like that. I remember just sort of it being a big part of the dream logic of this story as a kid, where you're just like, oh yeah, sure, of course she's on Logopolis as well. Yeah, why not? I remember knowing at the time that it was a watcher that's supposed to have brought her there. But yeah, what an asshole the Master is for taking over her father's body, giving her a bracelet that mind controls her, or at least wrist controls her. It's not entirely clear. She doesn't seem to object to the fact that she's strangling Adric at one point.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I think they would have done it differently today, a lot differently. And like, you would see her grabbing her own hand and like, I can't stop myself, or like trying to pull herself away with her legs. I mean, have your legs stopped? Just go to the other side of the room. Like.
Yeah, it's definitely not one of the Master's best thought through schemes, which is kind of the Master vibe that we get all over here. What do you think of Anthony Ainley's first full outing as the Master here?
I loved it. I thought it was good.
Well? Yeah.
He's definitely like he makes a choice, and whether it's his choice, J&T's choice. I mean, together they all make a choice, and I'm pretty sure it's his choice because having seen some interviews with him, he delights in the role of them. I actually met him once at a convention in the 80s.
Huh.
He delights in the role of the Master, and he makes a choice to relish it. Like he relishes his evil, which that's the big difference between him and Delgado. Delgado is kind of more menacing just generally, but he doesn't twist his mustache, literally or figuratively. Now, Ainley is always doing it. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad, and I love it. And there's certainly a little too much of the Master cackle. But you're getting throughout. Like he's just kind of randomly in the cloister room, menacing Tegan. He doesn't actually do anything. He's just kind of laughing
He's
and
just laughing off screen, which would work if you're meant to think that maybe the Watcher is the master, which I think was Bidmead's intention here.
right.
Completely ignoring the fact that we already know that Nyssa's father has been taken over by the master. If we watch the end of the Keeper of Traken, right?
Well, but it does he then disguise himself as the Watchers? You know what I mean? Like that's
Okay,
kind of like
fair enough.
you could argue that, but the again, I think Ainley's great if you like that sort of thing. If you think that performance and him doing this way in a different way than Delgado, you know, you could argue what it's certainly not Delgado. And if you love
Mm,
Delgado, I could see why you would probably think Ainley's kind of like this because he's clearly styled after him, right? He's got the
yeah,
black, almost priest-like outfit. He's
yeah.
got the goatee, so he's got echoes of that version of the master. But it's a different thing, and I think you know I really think it works. And he goes all the way with it, and I just love how he's like shaking hands with the doctor and he's like come in for a hug, you know. It's like he's just so bad, like he's like because he's the doctor's so clearly uncomfortable and hates doing this, and he's like, oh come on, we're buddies, right?
Yeah, and he also has this sort of weird, fastidious, prissy thing. Like he's always kind of brushing off his
Right.
velvet top there. Yeah, it does. I don't know. Going from Delgado to Ainley, it's interesting because here we go from Tom Baker to Peter Davison, right? Where they
Right.
were
Very different.
deliberately going for the exact opposite. Like you cannot follow Tom Baker. Don't even try. But they
Right.
thought that they could follow Delgado by just like we'll just lean in and make him a bit more pantomimey.
Yeah, well, it wasn't right after. I think that's kind of the difference. So you
Mm,
have
mm,
this more familiar master character, even though it's not the same, but it does sort of look superficially the same.
mm.
And then you have this doctor who's very different. So maybe that was the logic. But I gotta say, like when I was watching Logopolis, and there's the scenes in episode 4 where they're running around the compound, the Pharos project, and you see Tom Baker in his colorful outfit and the master in his black, Tegan in her purple. I mean, this is what I grew up on. This is like these images were just so colorful, clear, resonant. I mean, you know, J&T, say what you will about him, like he's coloring a vivid picture, literally and figuratively, and it works. It worked for me, certainly in this outing.
He really was. J&T really was all about the costumes, including his own Mr. Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
Kind of clearly drawn
I
himself
mean,
as a
say what you
character.
will about it, it's memorable, right? Like
Totally.
you look at that scarf, the masters, all of this stuff.
Mm.
Like you just, oh yeah, that's 1980. That's 1980 Doctor Who. That's Logopolis. It's Castrovalva. It's all the good
Yeah,
stuff.
it does. It does definitely speak to a time and a place. What do you think, though? I mean, it's interesting that we were brought here almost directly from the, from well, directly, in fact, from the Mark of the Rani. Um,
Right.
with a very late era Delgado.
Ainley.
What do you? Yes, sorry, late era Ainley.
Yeah.
Back to the very beginning. How did you see a difference? Did you see him evolving at all through his run?
Uh that's a really good question. Definitely you see sort of it's the young Ainley master here,
Hmm.
and he's just been renewed and he's loving every minute of it. He thinks he has the doctor dangling from strings, and he's playing him like all that stuff at the end where he's like, "Oh yeah, I decided to use the light speed overdrive anyway, and I did all this stuff. And here, why don't you connect the wires?" Um, that's really good and delightful. And then you sort of look at Mark of the Rani, and you kind of wonder why he came back for it. Again, I think he wondered why he came back for it subsequently because it's like this wasn't much of anything. I
Yeah.
think you kind of you sort of almost see like what he's been reduced to as sort of a hanger on of the Ronnie, mucking about with history, these smaller stakes. Um, yeah, I think if Ainley had been given the opportunity to play him more pathetic, and that was sort of more the theme of the story, I think that would have been better. But it just wasn't that complicated. So I did, even though his performance probably is a little more nuanced, he's definitely not as over the top, like constantly over the top as he is in Logopolis. you kind of feel like he's diminished, just because he doesn't have as much interesting things to do. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he does feel significantly diminished by the end of his run and just sort of a lot tireder. He looks oddly young here in I guess not very oddly young in Logopolis, but also it's like the Doctor. Like you can sort of say that the Doctor's logic is a bit off throughout Logopolis.
Yeah,
The Master's logic is a bit off as well, with this whole sort
totally.
of threatening the universe, just that he's going to stop or reverse the CVE,
Yeah.
the gap that's allowing entropy to escape from the real universe. Like that does how was that going to work? Like it's
Yeah,
really
he
not
seems
clear what is even going on at that stage.
yeah, he seems very drunk with his
Hmm.
own power, and they're just both off, right? They're not really thinking that well. And the master's plot, I mean, if I'm going with it,
Hmm.
um is that like what's funny? It reminds me of a fanzine. There was a fanzine I got a hold of in the 80s where it was criticizing JNT for having too high stakes in every episode, where everything
Yeah.
threatens either the whole universe or the entire space time continuum, or et cetera, et cetera. And it's like that just becomes meaningless after a while. And it made fun of this scene in particular and said, can you imagine some random planet that just hears the master's like warning, like peoples of the universe, please attend carefully.
Yes.
You're gonna submit to me or die. And he's like, oh my god, like who the hell is this? Like who
Yeah.
got a hold of the public PA system? Like,
It's a spam call. Like
yeah,
they check the number and it comes out like scam likely. Um,
yeah, because it's implied that he's somehow spraying this message to the whole universe.
he would have
And
done a lot better. It'd been peoples of the universe. Please attend carefully. You may have already won. Publishers Clearinghouse.
But if you go with it, it's like maybe he is that crazy, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it a bluff? Like, in other words, like, okay, we're not going to submit to you. Well, everybody dies. Like, if I can't have the universe, no one can have it. And maybe he is that nuts. Maybe he is the Joker, and you at least will get a good chunk of the universe again if he could actually get some enforcement power. Um to submit to him. And I think over time he could, right? Like he could like, okay, build up a power base on Earth or somewhere of people who are like think he's not bluffing,
Yeah.
and maybe he isn't. And eventually like people submit to him, which I think is kind of how he ends up ruling the Earth essentially in Sound of Drums and stuff. Like it's not just the taco fame,
Mm.
it's just that people are like, just too frightened that
Yeah.
he's just so crazy.
It's kind of a Trumpian thing, right? If you project that crazy for long enough and just say what you want, even how outrageous it is, maybe you'll get a little bit of it by the end of your evil reign. There is one line that's thrown in there that I hadn't remembered, and
Hmm,
is super weird in the context of talking about the Doctor and the Master. The Doctor says something like, "We're of the same mind," like literally.
right. In many
What?
ways, we have the same mind.
In
That's
many
yeah,
ways, we have the same mind. What's that about?
yeah. I always read it as kind of a some plot voodoo in
Hmm.
that how did the master even know to set this trap? Like, in other words, Bidmead needed something to write himself out of that, because then how would he even know the doctor is going to come to this place and try to fix the chameleon circuit
Hmm.
rather than have some reason? Which again, actually, I could pick this apart too. Um, why does the doctor even go to 1980 to find a police box? Because it's
Yeah.
like, why would you do that? Like they're way more common, 30,
And
40 years before that. Why wouldn't you
yeah,
go to the 50s or 60s?
off screen
So
and
weird.
off screen and on screen, right? Because this was partly inspired by the fact that there was a working police box
Right.
near Barnet in the UK. By the time they got there, the production crew got there, it'd been so vandalized, the police had actually taken it down, and
Yeah.
they had to bring in the old TARDIS prop to use, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, why not go back? Especially like okay, I will say, Logopolis does not get enough respect. in many ways. It invented the chameleon circuit. It was called a camouflage circuit prior to that.
It was?
In its one outing is the time meddler. They call it about it. They talk about it being a camouflage circuit. Is literally not mentioned as a chameleon circuit until
I
Logopolis.
didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I thought they said chameleon back in the day. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously this is we've been to Attack of the Cybermen, so we've seen
Yep.
when he does actually fix the chameleon circuit, and who knew it was you didn't need to go to Logopolis to get this fixed.
Right.
Yeah, but
It makes no sense. I mean, it just really makes no sense. Like you need to fix the outer shell of the TARDIS, so you're going to measure something that's
yeah,
kind of close.
yes,
Because like not every police box is exactly the same, as we know. Not even the TARDIS exterior, in fact, is never exactly the same. Confirmed by Twice Upon a Time.
yes,
So like, what does measuring some random police box somewhere in Britain have to do with anything?
yeah.
That the TARDIS fixing
I,
the TARDIS. It's so
I
weird.
honestly think Bidmead should have just leaned into all of these things as being deliberate, not deliberate mistakes, but like deliberate examples of just like the insanity of both the Doctor and the Master as they approach this crucial juncture. You also have to factor in to really mess with your noodle the fact that the Doctor would not have actually gone to Logopolis without the Watcher telling him to do so. So does the Watcher know? I mean, speaking of being of the same mind, like the Watcher is literally of the same mind as the Doctor. So why does the Watcher tell the Doctor to take his master-laden TARDIS to the place in the universe where the Master can cause maximum damage?
Right.
And is the Watcher actually responsible for the death of billions? Is the Watcher really like War Doctor levels of like taking on board all of the sins of the Doctor, all of the deaths of the Doctor onto his own head?
Well, maybe, but maybe it's a more along the well, there's a couple things. One, did he decide to go to the Logopolis earlier? Because didn't that start like we were going to measure it and go to Logopolis, and
Yes.
they don't
Yeah.
go to Logopolis because
Yeah.
they need to flush the master out. And they're just like, no, you have to go. So the idea of going to Logopolis in the first place predates that. But then
Correct.
the Watcher, in my mind, functions a lot like Doctor Strange in Infinity War, where he's essentially, okay, I've got to steer events now to the one outcome where people are saved. They win essentially, right?
Right.
So
At a
perhaps the
million.
Watcher also has knowledge of how things are going to turn out if in other universes, and maybe the Master completely just destroys everything or comes to rule the cosmos. And he had to get Nyssa there and he's basically seeing the 14 million possible futures, and he arranges all this stuff to get it to the one where they win.
Yeah, he's actually some sort of battle-scarred future post-Master, owning the universe version of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Like projecting himself back through time. That would be fantastic.
It
does allow you to
was fantastic.
Yeah.
It happened.
It allows for so much headcanon. Which is, I think Bidmead has done himself a disservice by even talking about Logopolis at all over the years. Just let everyone have their own interpretation of this really, really baffling story.
Yeah, totally. So how did you think that the radio telescope stuff held up?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we did this. This has bookended the Master and the Doctor's relationship. And we did, of course, go to Terror of the Autons.
Oh yeah,
which so it starts in the shadow of Radio Telescope. Here it ends in the shadow of Radio Telescope.
That's true.
Yeah,
Doctor Who loves its radio telescopes and antennas, as we've observed before. They're very useful things for alien races that want to invade or apparently destroy or save the universe.
Or emulate, because apparently the Logopolins have not heard of built-in random access memory. They've got to use this bang up-to-date bubble memory It's basically an early hard drive in the Forest Project computers.
Right. Yeah, let's have a good laugh at this, okay? Like the old school computer terminology and stuff. This is probably the part of Logopolis that has aged the least well, is all the computery stuff. And, bubble memory, which I don't know if that was actually a thing, but, the idea of something that would be retained in the computer after you shut it off was novel at the time. So that's, it's funny. You could have called it flash memory, I guess, but fun. And I just this moment, I got to say, I laughed out loud where Anthony Ainley is there, and he says, "So the answer's here," and he's looking at a dot matrix printer with,
Yes.
like sheets coming out of it, and you're just like, "Really? Is the answer there in a 1980 printer?"
I love the idea that the Doctor is like, oh, I've got the bubble memory. Like he's putting the bubble memory back in the Ferris computer, and they're staying up all night to try and fix this thing. It's like it's preserved the memory of what was last in the memory banks. I would just love it if the Master kind of held up a smartphone at that point, like, duh.
Downloaded it to my iPhone already. We're fine.
Oh, but yes, Doctor Who. Never try to be on the cutting edge of computers.
Yeah, but I gotta say the radio telescope stuff. Actually, I think a good chunk of it holds up. Obviously, there's the stuff where it's rotating and whatever, where they didn't really show, they weren't able to show it moving. That sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
But honestly, the shots where they're running and it's sort of it's looks like in the background and it's actually really in the foreground. The way they were doing those effects, that's kind of okay. Like you're kind of convinced this might actually be a real thing somewhere.
Yeah.
Instead of a model, but it was a model. So yeah,
There is
I
something
thought
wonderfully
it was okay.
dramatic about radio telescopes turning, which
Yeah.
is, I was reminded about this. I was actually watching Contact again last night. Which,
Oh, nice.
wonderful radio telescope scenes and that.
Probably radio telescope's best moment in TV or cinema.
Yes,
that
for
movie.
sure, for sure. Number one, Contact. Number two, Logopolis. Very, very much fun.
It's a distant second.
But yeah, I liked it. It kind of, it's a wonderful vibe, isn't it? I think, especially given that the choice that you could have made to have Tom Baker's final story be this kind of big, jazzy, kind of lots of millions of Daleks, and but no, it's sort of this quiet, science-y thing that gets kids very interested. I think in computers, in math, in telescopes. And just sort of reflects this sort of quiet anxiety of the early 80s and of the things those telescopes would be looking out for.
Yeah. Though
It does kind of bring it down when Adric has that whole joke of like, oh, they should be thrilled to see us. Is this where what is looking for? That's very sub Douglas Adams, right?
Right.
Loved his radio telescopes.
Yeah, that was kind of fine. I thought it's another hole in the master's plan besides just the bluff, is that your bluff is contingent on the radio telescope essentially being a gun that you have, and if one, you just disconnect the cable as the Doctor does, and okay, you don't have the gun anymore,
Right.
but even if he wasn't able to do that, say the Doctor just dies without doing it, and we could jump ahead to what if the evil plot had succeeded. Like, how is that helping you? Because, like, okay, well, what if the people of Earth just blow up the radio telescope? Now you're once again powerless. Like, you can't do anything.
It's so easy to fix, isn't it? And it's so weird that what the Master's essentially doing is fixing the problem with the universe and then saying, nice universe here. Same you have
Shame
here. Shame if someone would to disconnect the thing that I've just connected. Like, what is this? Again, I'm starting to think a subscription service maybe would have been more lucrative. Like, your first month of connection is free, but after that, people of the universe, attend carefully. You must pay $8.99 a month.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, it's funny. You need to sort of like go back to the question of like, what even is the entropy field and how does this all work? And, if you think about it, okay, I guess they're saying that, as we all know, the universe will now expand forever. It's been that, which is essentially the heat death of the universe, and
Right.
that it's, everything just gets equalized, and there's pretty universal scientific consensus that's the end, but it's trillions of years in the future.
Right.
And this is trying to convince us, oh, it actually already happened,
Mm.
which is all right, fair enough. Maybe it did. And the only way they could preserve it is by opening voids to other universes. Thus, we're not a closed system anymore. Again, it's all like on paper, kind of makes sense to someone who just picked up their first thermodynamics textbook.
As Bidmead probably had.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, but then how does entropy then leave our universe and go into another universe? Like there'd have to be some kind of like matter connection there. And if you think about it, aren't we being jerks to those other universes? Because now we're just
Yeah,
flooding them with entropy.
that's
Uh,
right. Polluting other universes. The EPA is going to be down on us like a ton of bricks. It's really, what are we doing? Leaking entropy
the
everywhere.
multiverse EPA with
I,
Owen
I,
Wilson as like the rep.
I
Yeah,
love the idea.
guys, you can't be just leaking entropy all over the place anymore, It's just not, it's not
I
good.
love the
Can't
idea
do
that
it.
this is kind of like the most boring, nerdiest conspiracy theory ever. It's like, entropy's already kicked in, man. We're already in the heat death of the universe. We just don't even know it. Wake up, sheeple.
But anyway, I think you have to assume like they opened the one CVE by Earth, and you just never hear about this again. You think this
Yeah.
would be the most sought after thing by every alien race seeking universal domination. But I think you have to assume at some point the Time Lords came in and just sort of made some permanent fix, or picked up where the Logopolitans left off. And
I love Logopolis. I mean, first of all, it sounds like a wonderful cocktail. Like, they're classy, they're cosmopolitan at the end of an evening. After a hard day's
oh man,
reciting numbers, you just kick back with a Logopolis.
we got to add that to the pull to open
That's it.
menu.
Yes. First, put fish fingers and custard together.
Yeah. And then Logopolitan. Have your fish fingers and custard with a Logopolitan. It goes really well.
By the way, I love that Logopolis, like, again, this is sort of like you could really into this being crazy and nothing meaning what it actually says. Logopolis literally means city of words, not numbers, words.
Yeah.
Which, again, we're kind of glad they put it in Greek because it wouldn't look that great after city of death, city of words. Doesn't quite sound as good.
Yeah, it just sounds kind of cool. I mean, it's certainly like it's not one of those. It's not. This is sort of a Bidmead era thing, right? Logopolis, Castrovalva, and they're just kind of interesting words. And you definitely immediately know which episode that is. It's like, oh, well, Terra the Autons, Terra the Zygon invasion, or whatever. Like you sometimes have to think it's for a second, like which thing that is. But this definitely, like, I don't know, they're memorable titles.
Yeah. Just to
but
go
yeah,
back, by the way, to Radio Telescope, because the other thing we have to talk about, another weird plot hole in Logopolis, one of a million, is the security guards at the Pharos.
right.
First of all, they cluster together in groups of 3, apparently.
Yeah, not very well trained.
They're not very well trained. But also they seem to somehow figure out how and when and why to hold off from running after these kids.
Yeah.
And this guy who's just fallen from this thing long enough for them to have a sort of a beautiful parting moment.
Right.
While the Doctor regenerates, security guards are nowhere in sight. And yet they do suddenly appear again at the beginning of Castrovalva, right? They're running away from them.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's funny. Like, do you really need that much security at a radio telescope? I mean, I guess it's Doctor Who, right? So it's the Doctor Who universe, and every radio telescope needs a full battalion of security because we know, one false move and you have a nesting consciousness on your hand. So that makes sense. But yeah, they definitely they come and they go. They forget who they're chasing.
Yep.
Because they see a guy in black and a guy in a maroon scarf running around, but only the stewardess in the purple uniform comes out. So
totally
it's like
distracts them.
Yeah, it's like I guess they're just we're so dumb. We were chasing 3 people and now we're talking to 3 people. So this must be the 3 people we were chasing. I guess that's the logic
actually
there.
AI security guards. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Bad at hide and
yeah,
seek, those guards. Um, yeah, they magically end up with a van or something in Castrovalva, as I recall. So yeah, the Pharos Project, it's an interesting place. They
really,
have cool looking radio telescopes, compatible with bubble memory, maestro, coffee drinking, late night workers, and some of the worst security guards in Britain. But there's stiff competition for that.
it was the 70s. Not a lot of things were working in the UK. We had the winter of discontents. Well, I guess in 1981 you still had a lot of industrial disputes.
Yeah.
In the Thatcher era. But yeah,
So, interesting note, this is the last episode to credit the lead role as Doctor Who.
isn't that
And
interesting?
starting with Castrovalva, they started crediting it as the Doctor, apparently at the request of Peter Davison,
I had no
which is interesting.
idea that it had gone on for that long.
Me too. For some reason, I thought they'd switched to the Doctor earlier, but maybe they did for an episode or two. But this is where they sort of permanently change it, and it stays the Doctor until the new series, actually.
Yeah,
So in the new series, it's once again Doctor Who for the first season, for Chris Eggleston's first season, or his only season. And then once again, it's changed to the Doctor for the Christmas Invasion. And again, apparently at the request of the lead actor. Apparently David
yeah,
Tennant wanted it that way, which is kind of funny because he ended up marrying Peter Davison's daughter.
yes.
So there's some weird, it's like, speaking of conspiracy theories.
It's some weird. I mean, you could make a wonderfully nerdy pub quiz question out of this. Like, which actors were Doctor Who and which actors were the Doctor, right?
Ah,
And
yeah.
it would be, Hartnell, Troughton, Pertwee, Baker, and Eccleston were all credited as Doctor Who,
Right. Wow, that's a great trivia question.
right? And actually,
Go ahead and steal that Doctor Who magazine.
Davison's the first one and only one, I believe, to be credited as both.
Right, because he was credited as Doctor Who here. And
Yes.
it is the first time they credit the incoming Doctor, because
Yeah.
previously it had always been uncredited or just didn't appear on screen in the case of Pertwee. He never appeared
Right.
until Spearhead from Space.
Because of Caves and Androsani, Baker comes first. The Baker comes first in that as well. So Peter Davison again never gets any respect. He's the second billing both times. There are two doctors on screen. He's just I guess
Yeah,
in the five doctors he gets credited first, or
sure.
does he? But this does kind of bring us back to something that Moffat has sort of insisted and made use of in World Enough and Time, is this notion that the character's actual name is Doctor Who, right?
Right.
And you kind of laugh as a Doctor Who fan. You kind of laugh dismissively at that, but given how much he was in the credits as Doctor Who for the vast majority of the show,
Yeah.
there's more credit to that theory.
There's a weird, it's almost like a crest and trough thing in terms of making a big deal about the name of the show vis-a-vis the lead character.
Yeah.
And in the old series, it manifests merely as jokes. Like you have like that terrible joke in the Five Doctors where it's like, who's that? The Doctor. Who? And then in the new series, they've obviously, again, crests and troughs, because I remember very distinctly in the first season with Eggleston, Rose asks him, I think this is in one of the either World War III or the one preceding that, was like, you don't even tell me your name. You're the Doctor Who. Is like, 900 years, I've gotten by pretty well. Like he basically just doesn't give the Who thing any credence. It seems like they're going for very straight, he's the Doctor, even though he's credited as Doctor Who. But then they had to do the whole storyline, right? With like, this is the oldest question in the universe and all this stuff. And like, oh, they're actually doing a little something with it. And I feel like I'm fine at being a trough now. Like he or she is just the Doctor. And let's, the enigmatic part of it, let's not talk too much about that. I mean, not literally make too much about it.
Right.
I I guess in JNT he just liked the question mark lapels, which was a thing in this period, which I
It
gotta
was.
confess, as a kid, for some reason I liked. I don't know why. I think it's because it's so costumey, and
Same.
it's almost like the Doctor's a superhero,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's, the randomizer could also be said to have brought us here because it's such a TARDIS-rich story. It's more TARDIS-rich than anything we've found so far. The randomizer knows that I love TARDIS stories, and
Don't
so
we all?
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm I'm gonna cry once we use the randomizer again. I'm gonna cry, Uncle. Like no more excessive TARDIS stories, please. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're
let's
done.
get one of
Yeah,
those first Doctor adventures where it just gets them there
yeah,
and then they
exactly.
leave it.
Yeah,
I guess I was second Doctor a lot too. But
yeah,
yeah, good plan.
but
But
yeah.
what if the evil plot had succeeded here? Like, it seems pretty straightforward. The universe is gone.
Mm,
End of
pretty
show, roll
much.
credits, done.
Yes, and the credits start to dismantle uh,
Yeah.
as entropy kicks in. Um, yeah, I guess so. I guess if the evil plot of the Masters has succeeds, but again, we've discussed the problem with that he's already reconnected the universe before threatening to
Yeah.
disconnect it.
Yeah. The only way it succeeds is if, say, the Doctor doesn't get to the cable, he falls, he still regenerates.
Hmm.
And so they just blow up the radio telescope by some other means. And then, yeah, this was never going to succeed. Come on,
Oh,
Master. What do
guys,
you? It's just think it through,
give us a
okay?
real challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, he's just getting
all
warmed
right.
up.
So here's one I'm not quite sure of, but maybe
Mhm.
you've zeroed in on something that works. Where is the Clara Splinter here?
Oh my god, I feel like she has to be everywhere. First of all, she's organizing on Logopolis because as Tegan tells us, Logopolis is basically a sweatshop.
Right.
So I think she's organizing to prevent any Logopolis unions from being formed here. She's throwing a spanner in the works because that just wouldn't work for our plot purposes. If they do sort of realize that they're living in sweatshop conditions. No, so there's that. She's distracting the security guards at the Faris project long enough that they forget who they're chasing.
Yeah, maybe she's in charge of their training.
I mean, she may even be the Watcher herself. We haven't really considered that theory.
I thought about that. It
Yeah.
could be. Maybe that's like her thing here, and maybe like a lot of Clara's Splinter energy was concentrated on Logopolis to ensure this outcome, right?
Yeah. Well, she's
I
certainly
kind
at the
of like
very
that
least,
one.
she's telling Nyssa what the Watcher's name is. Just call me the Watcher.
Right.
She says as she vanishes in white
It's either
costume.
that, it's either like this is the highest stakes Clara Splinter who's actually on screen in the old series, or it's so mundane she's like literally the girlfriend of the guy who's at the Pharos project listening to music, and she just gave him a Walkman for his birthday so that he would be so distracted and the master wouldn't kill him right off the bat. So maybe that was
Ooh,
it.
you know what else there is? Someone has to close the TARDIS doors to lock Tegan into the TARDIS the first time she goes in. That is never
Right.
revealed or figured out who that is. And a lot of people said, well, maybe that's the Watcher. Maybe it's Clara.
I'd love to the shot outside slam.
Yeah.
And you just see fingers like turn the key, zoom out. It's Clara. Love it. She's right there, guys. Boom.
Clara is
Done.
all about the TARDIS keys. We do know that.
All right. Final judgment. Is this a Dalek, an Ogron, or a Viscount banger? What do you say?
I gotta, again, I said I have no chill where Logopolis is concerned. I think it's a Viscount banger.
Wow,
I
look at
think
you.
for all its mistakes, and there are many, for all the plot weirdness, I think you just totally lean into that. You lean into the nightmare logic. You lean into the wonderful scenes. You lean into the fact that this creates so much of the Who legend, like the chameleon circuit, and exactly how it's supposed to function on the exterior of the TARDIS, and the fact that the TARDIS has wonderful computer graphics to show how it's going to turn into a pyramid. Yeah, it's a Viscount banger, not only because, Tom Baker did during the course of Logopolis get married to the daughter of Viscount Banger. Long-time listeners will know this is why Viscount Banger is the very top of our rating system, because that is the name of Lala Ward's aristocratic father.
I have to go with you on this one. I was going to say like super awesome Dalek because it isn't a perfect story, but you know what? I just love talking about it. I love
Yeah.
thinking about it. There's so much to like about this story,
It is a
and
mood.
I
It
could
is a
it really
hashtag
holds
mood.
up. And I could watch it again and again and again. This is a Viscount banger, guys. Like, go, like, I hope we've inspired some people to go back and watch Logopolis again because, man, it really holds up.
Mm.
It is super fun
And
and super good for so many reasons.
I don't think we've talked enough about the music. We've mentioned it. We mentioned Paddy Kingsland's music in the past. It's funereal. It's wonderful. But the best thing it does is it spends the entire story in this sort of dark, somber, minor key mood until the last 3 seconds where we get the 3 Doctor Who notes.
Yeah.
As Davison's face appears. And it's such a moment of like rejuvenation. It's like Doctor Who is back. Love that. It's hard
like,
to not get a shiver down the spine.
It's like that moment alone. We didn't even really talk much about that moment exactly, like the Watcher merging into Tom Baker, and it's actually for the time it's really well done. They were very careful about the head placement. Of course, it's not perfect. It was done in 1980, but it is like you could tell that the care they were giving even then. And he's just kind of there, and you get smiling Peter Davison right on the musical cue is perfect.
Yes,
with those notes, and he just sits up, and you're like, not only do you get the perfect cue, you get that like I have to wait until September, like you want it, like it's such a moment, like you've got to go right into Castrovalva, like, and they do, they pick up right on that moment, so it does pay off. But it is like I can't imagine as a kid watching that and having to wait months and months to see what happens.
Literally,
wow, because that's
we did in the UK. It was screened in February '81, and then Davison's run did not start on TV until 1982.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean,
dude,
we had that repeat that
it's
we've
like Game of Thrones level.
We talked about the 5 Faces of Doctor Who repeat that was sort of famous among Doctor Who fans in the UK because it was the first time we actually got repeats. But they repeated Logopolis at the end of that, and there was such a desire for it. It actually got better ratings the second time around.
I'll bet.
Pretty poor ratings on the first outing, like less than. I think just 7.1 million people watched that Regeneration episode, which is not
6.1. It was lower, which again, by today's standards is huge, but it also like for then it was like, not even close to the best episode, highest rated, which I think we talked about was like the Crotons or something. It was crazy. It was like 11 million people.
Absolutely insane. But yeah, it is for that sequence of the Watcher turning into Peter Davison, it is a little too obvious that it's Davison. Like I know they probably just couldn't persuade Tom Baker to sit with makeup in that position for too long, like to have more of a transition. But it's like it becomes fairly obvious. Well, as soon as you see the art, it's like that's clearly David.
I think that was fine. You just kind of you didn't get a Tom Baker transition moment. I see what you mean. Yeah, I think it was okay because he I guess if you were really sequencing it out now, you would have done Baker to mushy Baker to Watcher to mushy Davison to Davison. So they were missing one of those phases. So yeah, because I think you naturally have a Watcher to mushy Davison to Davison, right? Like that makes sense to me. It's just you don't have the other side of it. Yeah, I've never saw that as much of a flaw. I guess because Baker, he's already out. You don't want him to go out as a mushy. You don't want his the last moment of Tom Baker to be mushy Tom Baker.
That's true. That's true. Sort of like you don't want the last of Matt Smith to be old Matt Smith. That's why they had the reset button where he becomes young Matt Smith again. Yeah, I could totally see that. But yeah, speaking of mushy Baker and mistakes and the Watcher, we've been teasing the fact that our very own Pull to Open Watcher is standing off screen and pointing.
He is
pointing at the Codex.
Because we've gotten to that time, guys. It's time to activate the randomizer, but someone has pointed out. I'll find out exactly who.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say it's interesting that there is. We mentioned it briefly. The clip show in Logopolis, where it's you get different villains saying "Doctor," and then different all of Tom Baker's companions going "Doctor," Which reminds me of I once did a poll on Twitter where the question was, "Are you evil? Test whether you're evil, but how do you say the following word? Do you say doctor or do you say doctor?" And that is never better illustrated than in this clip show. Anyway, the Dalek that we see in the clips is from Destiny of the Daleks, which also holds a special place in my heart because it was the first Tom Baker serial that I watched live, Logopolis being the last one. So that's kind of appropriate for that reason, and it's appropriate for another reason.
It turns out, everyone, that the Watcher, who in this case is one of our Twitter followers with the handle Rimnimrim, but also the name M.
Yeah.
I want to thank M. I'm just going to call them M from now on. M, thank you for pointing out that Destiny of the Daleks is actually missing from the Codex. It is a fundamental flaw in the universe that we're going to have to deal with now. That we have a discontinuity in our Codex. We skip right over Destiny of the Daleks, go right from the Armageddon Factor to City of Death.
Yep.
So we're going to have to do something about this. Chris, what is our solution?
Well, it is the end of the Codex as we knew it, but the moment has been prepared for. Because it turns out that our Watcher is Destiny of the Daleks. And I'd like you to imagine now that we have a larger special effects budget than we actually do here on Pull to Open. And the Destiny of the Daleks is now merging with our spreadsheet. And going in there, Peter, are you putting it into the Codex as we speak?
Okay. Yeah, you guys hum. Dun, 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 dun. And here we go. Insert one row below. Oop. I did it on Power of Kroll. Sorry, 1 second. One row below.
No. Oh my God! Some Logopolitan has said the wrong number in some alleyway somewhere, and
all right, it is now added.
Yes,
and I think we're going to have to do some renumbering.
We are.
And unlike when the War Doctor was revealed in the show as a gap that we didn't account for before, did not lead to a renumbering. At least as far as we know, not yet.
Yeah, not an official one anyway.
We are going to do an official renumbering of the Codex, and while that's going to change some of the numbering, obviously everything we've already done will still be time locked, and we'll probably have some correcting to do over the next few months on some of our posted episodes. So 103 in the Codex will now be Destiny of the Daleks, and everything else will
shift one
prior
along.
to that will stay the same.
Yeah.
So Legend of the Sea Devils is now 301.
Yes. So for all us saying that the Codex has now gone into the 300s, well, it turned out that it had been there all along. But thank you to our alert listeners pointed that out, and we have fixed it.
Thank you, M.
Thank you, M. And we will go forward with a
in all our beliefs,
and prove to you that we are not mistaken in ours as we go through a more complete random journey. But this is exciting. All of the time lock numbers have shifted. Like we don't know where we're going now. It's very, very Whovian.
Exactly, but it is time. We cannot delay the moment any longer. We have to activate our new randomizer. Well, our repaired randomizer. Now that is the complete Codex.
Yes.
So every single Doctor Who story, from An Unearthly Child all the way to Legend of the Sea Devils, all 301 stories by our numbering, are now in the Codex.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to pick one through the other part of the randomizer, the Executor, which of course is played by random.org, and Chris is manning the controls of. Are you ready, Chris?
That's right, I am ready. And just in case you didn't know, random.org is a website that uses actual atmospheric noise, presumably via a radio telescope, bouncing around the atmosphere. And it is picking up not entropy, but actual atoms bouncing around. And that's how it generates a random number, because computers, even ones with bumbled memory, are really kind of rubbish at creating random numbers. Even the smartphone in your pocket doesn't do it very well. So that's how we do it. I come up with a number between 1 and 301 with our newer, fatter codex. Pete is looking at the codex.
That's right.
When you tell me to take off, we will hit the generate button.
I'm going to challenge the Codex,
Yes.
and I'm just going to say it. Take us to Destiny of the Daleks.
I was thinking the same thing. Let's get this out of the way.
Let's do it.
Like
Boom.
Not
Done.
just the actual problem, but also all of my childhood nostalgia out of the way in one go. I'm gonna renew my challenge of let's please get out of this e-space of classic Who. Let's go back to
New Who.
Go back. I'm missing it, man. All right.
Yep,
so
me too. All right. Wait, I got to give you a countdown.
Yeah, give me a countdown.
Sorry. Here it is. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Affirmative.
65. It's not listening.
It's not listening to you at all. We are at Carnival of Monsters.
Oh my God.
Boom.
Do you know the connection already?
You already know why the randomizer is bringing us here?
Yes. Carnival of Monsters was
Clip
in the 5 Faces of Doctor Who.
Oh, wow.
The repeat, it was the one that represented Pertwee.
And we were just talking about Harry, but he's not Harry in this. It is Ian Marter is in this episode, though.
Ah.
So that's another one.
Wow.
Yeah,
so it turns
speaking
out
of clip shows, there's a clip or two in this one.
Interesting.
So anyway, bam, the connection's already starting.
Yeah,
but they
that is
are
totally
not
random.
They're definitely not going to end until we get to it. Guys, we're going to be talking all about Carnival of Monsters next week. But in the meantime, this is the end of our commentary around Logopolis. Thank you very much for listening. This is a podcast, everyone. It's Pull to Open. It's on every podcast service that you like. We're on all of them. Well, maybe not all of them, but almost all of them.
And even a few you don't.
Maybe a few you don't, but you've got many, many, many different choices to subscribe. You could go to Stitcher, you could go to Google Podcasts, you could go to something called Reason.fm. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. Please tell your friends about it. And please leave a review on whatever platform that allows for a review. Apple Podcasts in particular loves the reviews, and we love it when people leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. So go ahead and leave a review there. Follow us on social media. We're super active on TikTok at Pull2Open. We're also at Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63. It's going to be a barrel of laughs next time because we're going to a Carnival of Monsters. It's going to be so great. Bring the kids.
Hey.
Do all those other circusy things you do. Roll up, roll up, roll up. Come on back.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.